Welcome to Juran Institute's Quality Tools and Tutorials series, Process Maps. In this quick tutorial, we will learn how to construct a process map, the meaning of the symbols that comprise process maps, and how process maps are used to describe a process as it really is. It should also be noted that, in the field, process maps are referred to in a number of ways. One of the most frequent terms is flow diagrams. For the purpose of this tutorial, we will be referring to them as process maps. First, we must ask ourselves, what is a process map? A process map is a graphic representation of the sequence of steps in a given process. Process maps plot the major steps of the process in addition to defining the beginning and the end. There are a number of key benefits to process maps. Process maps help project teams ensure that they have participation from the appropriate departments and stakeholders for the problem at hand. They also help participants establish a common understanding of the process that they are investigating. Additionally, they provide a graphic representation to better understand, manage, and address improvement opportunities within a flow. Let's take a look at some of the most commonly used symbols that comprise process maps. The most frequently used symbol in any process map is the activity symbol. The activity symbol is a rectangle that indicates a single step in the process. A brief description of the activity is shown inside the rectangle. A diamond designates a decision or branch point in the process. The description of the decision or branch is written inside the symbol, usually in the form of a good question. The answer to the question determines the path that will be taken out of the decision symbol. Each path is labeled to correspond to an answer. A terminal symbol is a rounded rectangle that identifies the beginning or end of a process. Start or end is shown inside the symbol. Flow lines are used to represent the progression of steps in the sequence. The arrowhead on the flow line indicates that the direction of the process flow. At times, flow lines may be labeled to provide additional detail. An example of this would be two flow lines originating from a decision box. One line may be labeled yes, and one line may be labeled no, to indicate which direction the sequence will go depending on the decision being made. A document symbol represents written information pertinent to the process. The title or description of the document is shown inside the symbol. A database symbol represents electronically stored information pertinent to the process. The title or description of the database is shown inside the symbol. A connector is a circle used to indicate a continuation of the process map. A letter or number is shown inside the circle. The same letter or number is used in a connector symbol on the continued process map to indicate how the processes are connected. It should be noted that additional symbols exist for use in process mapping. For the purpose of this tutorial, we have only shared with you the most commonly used and most fundamental symbols. Now that we're familiar with the basic elements of a process map, let's see how they work together to represent the flow of a process. The following is just an example of how a process map may be developed. Your own maps will look different, as each process map is a representation of a specific process. We begin with the terminal symbol to represent the start of our process. Next, we indicate the sequence of our process with a flow line to connect the beginning of our flow to the first activity within our process. In the case that the first activity references a particular document, We indicate this by connecting a flow line to our document symbol and labeling it with the document title. Supposing we have to make a decision after our first activity, we would now indicate a decision with a diamond. For the sake of this example, let's assume this decision asks whether or not we have complete patient information. In the case that we do not have complete patient information, we would branch off of our decision box with a flow line labeled No. In this case, we might refer to our database in order to find the remaining required information. Note that we indicate this using our cylinder-shaped database symbol. Once the information is found, we may have a process step where we update the documentation with the newly found patient information. This would be indicated with another activity box. Now, let's look back to our decision box. We indicated what sequence of steps would occur if we did not have the necessary patient information, but we have yet to represent the sequence assuming the patient information had been complete. To do so, we draw a second line from our decision box and label it Yes. Our next activity may be to submit the patient information. In this case, both of our sequences originating at our decision box will converge back to the same activity symbol. Finally, we indicate the end of our process with a terminal symbol labeled End. Now, let's take a look at an example. The following process map represents the process from making the decision to admit a patient to the patient's arrival on the unit. We begin with our first step, the decision to admit to arrival on unit, starting with the terminal symbol to represent the start of our process. Next, we indicate the sequence of our process with a flow line to connect the beginning of the flow to the first activity within our process. In this case, the emergency room MD decides to admit. Next, we follow that with another flow line leading to the next action in our process. The emergency room MD writes the order. From there, our next flow line leads to a document symbol. In this case, the physician orders. Going back to our second action, we connect a flow line to our third action. The emergency room clerk calls admitting. That is followed with our fourth action. The admitting identifies and calls the appropriate nursing unit. From there, we lead to a decision diamond. In this case, it asks the question, is the bed available? Assuming the answer is no, our flow line leads back to the previous action. Another flow line leading from the diamond leads us to a second document space, in this case, the admit face sheet. Going back to our diamond, in the event that the answer is yes, our flow line leads to another action. The emergency room nurse calls the unit nurse. The next flow line from that action leads us to a document symbol, the symbol for the nursing orders. Next, our emergency room nurse action connects a flow line to another decision diamond, asking the question, is this a special case? If the answer is no, our flow line leads to the action in which an emergency room clerk will call transport. That is followed by another action, transport arriving and taking the patient, which in turn is followed by a third action, the patient's arrival on the unit. Going back to our special case question diamond, assuming the answer is yes, this leads us to a second flow line, which takes us to the action box, informing us that the emergency room nurse and assistant are to transport the patient. This action then leads us to another flow line, which takes us to the most recent action on the flowchart, patient's arrival on the unit. And finally, the last flow line takes us to another terminal symbol to indicate the end of our process. If you would like to learn more about Juran Institute and our services, please visit us at our website, www.juran.com. You may also reach us by calling our 800 number, 1-800-338-7726, or emailing us at tina@juran.com. If you found this webinar helpful, please feel free to view our other tools and tutorials by visiting and subscribing to our YouTube page. You may visit it via the following link: www.youtube.com/Juran Institute. You may also be interested in reading and subscribing to our blog, The Big Q, on current quality issues and topics at www.juran.com/blog. You can also follow us on Facebook by searching for Juran Institute, or Twitter by searching for The Big Q. Thank you for your time.